Bacteria, the first living organism on our planet. E. coli in the bacteriophage. If you remember, bacteriophage are viruses that attack bacteria. E. coli is one of those bacteria that can be attacked by a virus. And this picture just shows you, if you look at the bottom there, you see a square that has all kinds of bacteria in it. And as you go to the right, there's less and less bacteria. That is because a virus is attacking it and killing them. Just a really quick review of what a bacteriophage is. It's a virus that attacks bacteria. Here are just various pictures of bacteria cells. Some of them are computer generated. The one on the bottom right, it's been stained, but those are what bacteria kind of look like under the microscope. But those are fairly large from what we will see in our microscope. Those probably have been magnified maybe 1,000 times its original size. If you remember, bacteria are prokaryotes. They do not have a nucleus. They do not have a spot for the DNA, so the DNA just floats around everywhere. Again, they are the first living thing on Earth. They can exist almost everywhere on our planet, and they're placed in one of two kingdoms, either the eubacteria or the archaebacteria. And we're going to talk about the archaebacteria first. These were the first living organisms on our planet. When the planet first came about, there was these extremely harsh conditions. These do not require oxygen, so they don't need oxygen to breathe, because at first when the Earth was made, there was no oxygen present. There's three main types. There's the methogens. They can live in methane swamps, and they live in your intestines. Halophiles, they live in very salty conditions, like in the Great Lake. And then there's the thermoacidophiles, which live where it's very hot and acidic. Phile, by the way, means to love. So again, they can live in sewage disposal plants breaking down sewage. Those are the methogens. They can live in high salt environments like the Great Lakes and the Dead Sea. The thermoacidophiles will live in hot sulfur springs where they can convert sulfur to energy. Yes, they're converting sulfur into energy. The kingdom Eubacteria make up the larger of the two prokaryote kingdoms, generally are surrounded by a cell wall composed of complex carbohydrates. Cyanobacteria is one example of a eubacteria, and this bacteria is responsible for producing oxygen on the Earth. They think these started to come about. Oxygen was a waste product, and that's how the oxygen got into our atmosphere. They may have also been one of the first organisms to colonize onto land. They don't necessarily live directly in the water. And with eubacteria, they are autotrophic. Troph refers to energy, auto refers to self. So they make their own energy either through photosynthesis or chemosynthesis. Chemosynthesis is using as a chemical, taking in a chemical to make energy. Photosynthesis is taking in the sun to make energy. Or they're heterotrophic, meaning they rely on other things for energy. Just like animals, we're heterotrophic. We cannot use the sun, we cannot use chemicals. We take in other organisms, other items to make our energy. Bacteria can have many shapes. The three main shapes are sphere, rod, spiral. Their fancy names are cocci, bacillus, spirillum. And then there's some prefixes. You may have heard of streptococcus. Strepto means twisted, coccus means spheres, so that's twisted spheres. Or staphylococcus. Staphylo means you get a bunch of them. Coccus means you get a bunch of them in spheres. If you had Staphylobacillus, you'd get a bunch that look like rods. Staphylospirillum, you get a bunch of them that are spirals. And we'll look at these underneath the microscope later on. Bacteria and the air they need. Some bacteria need oxygen, some don't. Some can't live in the presence of oxygen. So there's the obligate anaerobes. They are obligated. They have to be anaerobic. They're unable to grow in the presence of oxygen. Oxygen kills them. Tetanus, gangrene are two examples. They are obligated to be anaerobic. Anaerobic means no oxygen. Facultative anaerobes. They can grow in the presence of oxygen, but they don't have to have oxygen, and oxygen doesn't harm them. Facultative anaerobes. And then there's the aerobic bacteria. They require a constant supply of oxygen. And as you guessed it, we are aerobic organisms. Anything that needs oxygen to make energy is aerobic. But bacteria, some are obligated anaerobes. Some die in the presence of oxygen. Facultative anaerobes. Some, they don't need the oxygen, but it doesn't hurt them. And then there's the aerobic bacteria. And again, this is why they can survive in almost any place on this planet, including in you. Bacteria reproduction. Bacteria can reproduce asexually, or they can reproduce sexually. Asexual reproduction is known as binary fission. Their DNA is circular in shape and it gets duplicated. The chromosomes are then separated by an elongation of the cell, so the cell gets really long on each side. Then the cell membrane grows inward and the cell divides into two. That sounds exactly like mitosis, and that's what it is, but when we're talking bacteria reproducing from 1 into 2, making exact copies of themselves, it's known as binary fission. Bi means 2, fission means to split. Asexual reproduction. So they can reproduce asexually, just making thousands of copies of themselves in a day. But they can also reproduce sexually through conjugation, transformation, or transduction. Conjugation, they conjugated, meaning aka had sex. DNA is passed from one bacteria to another bacteria. And they can actually pass DNA between species. That's unheard of in any other kingdom. Transformation. A bacteria will take DNA from a dead bacteria. So it's picking up bacteria from maybe a bacteria that has passed. Or there's transduction. Bacteriophages carry portions of DNA from one bacteria to another. So as these viruses are going from bacteria to bacteria, they're taking some little pieces of DNA with them and giving it to the new bacteria. With all of these, again, it can be between species. If there is a bacteria that is immune to an antibiotic, that immunity can be passed on to a new bacteria very quickly. Or it can make hundreds of copies of itself, and now you have lots of bacteria that are immune to that antibiotic. And that's becoming a problem in recent years. So they can reproduce asexually and sexually, and now we'll have some pictures that show that. Here's binary fission. You have the chromosome, it duplicates, the cell elongates itself, and then it splits into two. And then we have some pictures of conjugation. Curing bacterial disease is a lot easier than curing a virus infection, a viral infection. With bacterial diseases, we take antibiotics. Anti is it means against. Biotic, the bacteria. What happens is the antibiotic poisons the bacterial enzymes, but they don't hurt our enzymes. We are two different organisms. We have two different sets of enzymes. Our enzymes are not like the bacteria enzymes, so we can take a pill that will attack just the bacteria enzymes and kill the bacteria. The problem has been, though, if you take that when you don't need it, if taken too much, or you don't take your whole prescription, the bacteria can become immune to the antibiotic. For example, you go to your doctor and you say, I've been sneezing, I'm sniffly, I have this cold, please give me an antibiotic. Cold is a virus. Antibiotics do nothing for viruses. So if the doctor gives you a prescription for an antibiotic, when you have a virus, you're taking it when you don't need it, and the bacteria in your body can eventually become immune to the antibiotic, and it's not good. You don't want to take it when you don't need it, you don't want to take it too often, and you want to make sure you finish your prescription. Same thing with all those antibacterial hand scrubs and all those sanitary things that, they have antibiotics in it. Those hand rubs and all that. You use that, you're killing 99% of the bacteria. You're not killing 100%. 1% is surviving. They are reproducing and making many, many copies of themselves. And used over and over and over again, antibacterial items are not good. You're actually selecting for stronger bacteria. Remember when we talked about natural selection? So antibacterial items are not always good to use. You are better off using regular hand soap. Soap with the water breaks down the cell wall of the bacteria and actually kills the bacteria that way. And you can kill all of them. And then the ones you don't kill, you're actually washing off your hands. They're just going away. So by using antibacterial soaps and all those other items, you're actually selecting for stronger bacteria because you don't kill all of them. The only ones surviving are the strong ones, and they get to survive and pass on more strong ones. There are such things as good bacteria. All over your body you have tons of bacteria on your skin, inside of your intestines, in your large intestines, small intestines, everywhere you have bacteria, and they're doing good things. There's nitrogen-fixing bacteria, which are good for plants. There's decomposing bacteria, which are good for our nose. Think about something decomposing. Not really, I guess it's not good for our nose. It smells, but we're getting rid of all the dead plant life, dead animal life. Without those, dead things would just be laying around forever. We use bacteria to make food. Cheese, pickles, yogurt, sauerkraut are all used in the process of a bacteria working, doing its job. Bacteria are used to make antibiotics to get rid of the bad bacteria. One problem though, when you do take antibiotics, it doesn't select just the bad bacteria, it selects all the bacteria. So you may want to take a probiotic, which will put the good bacteria back in your body. And helps with digestion. Cows have bacteria. We have bacteria that help with our digestion also. Another thing that makes bacteria so resilient, besides the fact that they can exchange DNA between species, and they can go through natural selection very quickly because one can become two can become four, basically because they can reproduce through binary fission. Another thing that allowed them to survive for so long and survive anywhere is because they can form something called an endospore. So if they're in an environment that's actually bad for them or very unfavorable, maybe an environment where you're taking an antibiotic and then maybe you quit for a while, that bacteria will copy a portion of its cytoplasm, copy its DNA, and kind of dehydrate itself and then enclose itself in this little spore coat. So it's this little tiny microscopic spore that hangs out. The rest of the bacteria goes away. And when you have the cytoplasm, chromosome, and a spore coat all wrapped up, it's known as an endospore. That endospore can hang out as long as it needs to. It's kind of hibernated. When the environment becomes favorable again, the endospore just absorbs some water, and now it's a bacteria again, causing problems. So bacteria can protect themselves by forming endospores. And they have found endospores in items in soil and clothing that are hundreds to thousands of years old. So they can really hibernate for a long time.